While visiting Mexico, my wife secretly changed our flight details and left without telling me as a prank. Next day, she started sending me messages when she arrived in the USA. It was hilarious, she said. I ignored her for 7 days until I replied. Thanks for this. Chloe has been the sweetest. 71 desperate calls. Look, I'm not the kind of guy who expects much from life. A decent cup of coffee, maybe some Netflix that doesn't buffer every 5 seconds, and the basic human courtesy of not being abandoned in a foreign country by the person who promised to love me till death do us part. Apparently, that last one was asking too much. I woke up that morning in our beachfront resort in Cancun with the kind of drowsy optimism that only comes from expensive thread counts and the distant sound of waves crashing. The sun was doing that thing where it filters through white curtains like some kind of tropical heaven. And I stretched out my arm, expecting to find my wife, Jessica Miller, probably scrolling through Instagram or planning which overpriced smoothie bowl we'd be Instagramming for breakfast. Instead, my hand hit cold sheets and the devastating realization that I was alone. Not alone like she's in the bathroom alone, but alone like something is fundamentally wrong with this picture alone. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the screen with one eye still refusing to participate in consciousness. That's when I saw it. The text message that would basically define the next chapter of my life, and not in the motivational poster kind of way. It was hilarious. You should have seen your face while you were sleeping. I stared at those words like they were written in ancient hieroglyphics. Hilarious? What was hilarious? Did I snore particularly loud? Did I drool? Was there a spider on my face that she heroically removed while I slept? My brain, still operating at about 40% capacity, tried to piece together what possible scenario could warrant this level of amusement at 7 in the morning. Then I noticed the silence. Not the peaceful, meditative kind of silence you pay extra for at wellness retreats. This was the wrong kind of silence, the kind that makes your stomach drop and your fight or flight response start doing warm-up stretches. I sat up, suddenly very awake, and looked around the room. Her suitcase, the massive pink monstrosity she insisted on bringing, despite my reasonable protests about baggage fees, was gone. Not just moved, but vanished, like it had never existed. I stumbled out of bed, my feet hitting the cold tile floor, and started checking the bathroom, the closet, under the bed, like some kind of deranged detective investigating the case of the missing wife. Her sandals gone, those ridiculous ones with the little flowers on them that she bought at a market 2 days ago, claiming they spoke to her soul. Her phone charger vanished. Even that god-awful sun hat she loved, the one that made her look like she was auditioning for a role in a retired librarian's vacation photo album, completely absent. My hands started shaking, not from fear exactly, but from that special cocktail of confusion, anger, and what the hell is happening that your body serves up when reality stops making sense. I grabbed my phone again and scrolled through our text thread looking for clues, explanations, or maybe a hidden message that said, "Psych, I'm hiding in the closet." Nothing. Just that one cryptic text about my sleeping face being hilarious. I did what any rational person would do in this situation. I called the hotel desk. My voice came out higher than I intended, cracking like a 13-year-old's during puberty. "Hi, yes, this is room 412. Did my wife leave, like check out without me?" I tried to sound casual, like this was a totally normal question that people asked every day, like I wasn't currently standing in a luxury hotel room in Mexico wearing nothing but boxer shorts and existential dread, questioning every life choice that led to this moment. The receptionist's voice came through with a kind of cheerfulness that felt personally offensive given my current mental state. "Yes, sir. Miss Miller checked out at 3 a.m. She mentioned you had separate travel plans and didn't want to wake you. She said to tell you to enjoy your extra week here." Separate travel plans? Those 3 words hit me like a piñata bat to the face. We booked these tickets together 6 months ago. I was there when she clicked purchase on both our flights. I remember because she made me triple check the dates and then accused me of not being excited enough about the trip.
I had been excited. I'd taken time off work, coordinated with my boss, told all my friends I'd be offline. This was supposed to be our romantic getaway, our chance to reconnect, our Instagram-worthy vacation that would make everyone back home jealous of our perfect marriage. My hands were definitely shaking now. I hung up on the overly cheerful receptionist and immediately called the airline, navigating through what felt like 47 automated menus before finally reaching a human being who confirmed my worst nightmare. "Yes, Mr. Evans, I see here that your wife contacted us yesterday afternoon and changed your return flight to next Tuesday. She mentioned you wanted to extend your stay. She took the 6 a.m. flight back to Chicago this morning." I stood there in the middle of that beautiful hotel room, phone pressed to my ear, barefoot on the cold tile, holding a half-eaten mango I'd apparently grabbed from the fruit basket at some point during this crisis without even realizing it. The mango was dripping juice down my hand. I watched it drip, mesmerized, because it was easier than processing what was actually happening. My wife, the woman I'd married 3 years ago in that barn venue she'd insisted on despite my allergies, the woman who promised to be my partner through thick and thin, the woman who literally stood in front of 200 people and vowed to honor and cherish me, had just abandoned me in Mexico like I was a goldfish she'd gotten bored of. And apparently she thought it was funny. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding that stupid mango, and stared at my phone. Another text popped up. "Don't worry, I'll pick you up next week."
Miss you already. Face blowing a kiss. Miss me? Miss me? Lady? You just committed what I'm pretty sure counts as spousal abandonment with a side of psychological warfare. And you're hitting me with kiss emojis? I looked around the empty room. Our room, which was now just my room, and tried to figure out if this counted as a kidnapping, a divorce starter pack, or just stupidity with sunscreen. The mango juice was still dripping. Somewhere outside, people were laughing and splashing in the pool, living their normal, non-abandoned lives. And me, I was sitting in paradise alone, holding fruit, and wondering if my marriage had just ended via text message and budget airline logistics. Spoiler alert, it absolutely had. I spent the first hour after my wife's great disappearing act trying to convince myself this was all some elaborate joke. You know, the kind where someone jumps out from behind a potted plant yelling surprise, and everyone laughs and hugs it out, and we all pretend this wasn't a deeply traumatic experience that'll require years of therapy to unpack. I genuinely expected Jessica to come bursting through the door with her phone out, recording my reaction for TikTok or whatever social media platform she was currently obsessed with this week. I even checked behind the curtains. Not my proudest moment, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And apparently, I'd become the kind of person who searches hotel rooms for his hiding wife, like we're playing the world's worst game of hide and seek. But no, she wasn't hiding behind the curtains or under the bed or in the shower doing that thing where you stay really quiet and try not to laugh. She was just gone. Actually, legitimately, no joke, gone. Probably somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico right now, sitting in seat 17B, sipping a complimentary ginger ale and thinking about how hilarious this whole situation was. My phone buzzed again, and I looked down at it with the kind of dread usually reserved for checking your bank account after a night of drunk online shopping. Relax, it's a prank. I'll tell everyone how you freaked out. It'll be funny. I read that message 3 times, each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. A prank? She called this a prank. Like putting plastic wrap over the toilet seat is a prank? Like hiding someone's keys is a prank? Abandoning your spouse in a foreign country and stealing his return flight is not a prank. It's a felony with vacation vibes. I typed out about 15 different responses, each one angrier than the last, but deleted them all. What was I supposed to say? Hey honey, great prank, really got me. Nothing says comedy gold like international abandonment.
No, she didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin, even though she had. Even though I was currently spiraling in a hotel room trying to figure out if my marriage had just ended or if this was just another Tuesday in the Jessica Miller chaos show. Yeah, hilarious. Like identity theft, but with marriage vows. Like being catfished, except you're already married to the catfish. Like finding out your life partner thinks emotional terrorism is a personality trait. I needed coffee. Not the wimpy hotel room coffee that tastes like sad water filtered through old socks, but real coffee. The kind that could wake up a coma patient or fuel a small rocket ship. The kind of coffee that might help me process the fact that my wife had just gaslit me across international borders. I got dressed in yesterday's clothes because apparently all my clean stuff was in Jessica's suitcase. Of course it was. And headed downstairs to the hotel bar. It was barely 9 a.m., which felt too early to start drinking, but also seemed like exactly the right time given the circumstances. The bartender gave me a look that said he'd seen this movie before, and I was just the latest rerun. "Strongest coffee you've got," I said, sliding onto a bar stool. "And maybe a map to the nearest U.S. embassy, if that's a thing you keep behind the bar?" He smiled sympathetically and poured me something that looked like it could strip paint. Perfect. I sat there, trying very hard not to look like a man whose entire life had just imploded before breakfast, which is harder than it sounds. I kept checking my phone, partly hoping for an explanation that made sense, and partly hoping Jessica would text something so ridiculous I could use it as evidence in the divorce proceedings I was increasingly convinced were in my future. That's when I noticed her. The woman sitting 3 seats down with a laptop covered in stickers that looked like they'd been collected from every corner of the internet. "Wi-Fi wife," read one. "Exes don't deserve tax refunds," announced another. There was a third one that just said "Nope" in bold letters, which honestly felt like the most relatable thing I'd seen all morning. She had this calm, focused energy, the kind that suggested she had her life together in a way I currently did not. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, glasses perched on her nose, fingers flying across the keyboard like she was writing the great American novel, or at least a very strongly worded Yelp review. I must have been staring because she looked up and caught me mid-existential crisis stare. Instead of being weird about it, she just smiled slightly and went back to her laptop. Professional, unbothered, definitely not the kind of person who would abandon someone in Mexico for laughs. I turned back to my paint stripper coffee and pulled out my phone, Googling U.S. Embassy, Cancun, because that seemed like the adult thing to do. I was so absorbed in trying to figure out if I needed an appointment or could just show up and explain that my wife had committed what I was pretty sure was at least 3 different crimes. I didn't notice the woman had moved closer until she spoke. "Let me guess," she said, her voice carrying the slightly amused tone of someone who'd seen enough tourist disasters to write a book about it. "Stranded tourist." I looked up, probably looking exactly as pathetic as I felt. "Close," I said, attempting a smile that definitely came out more like a grimace. "Stranded husband." My wife thought disappearing and stealing my return flight would be funny. Her eyebrow raised in that way that communicated an entire paragraph of judgment without saying a word. "Funny? Depends on who's laughing. You don't seem like the one finding the humor in it." "Yeah, weird how being abandoned in a foreign country kills my sense of comedy," I said, surprised by how bitter I sounded. "Must be something about the international betrayal that dampens the mood." She actually laughed at that, a real laugh, not the polite kind people do when they're uncomfortable. "That's fair. I'm Chloe, by the way. Chloe Garcia, travel writer, professional observer of tourist disasters, and apparently now a witness to whatever this situation is." "Alex Evans," I said, shaking her offered hand. "Professional disaster, amateur abandoned husband, and current star of what I'm calling How I Lost My Wife and Found Trust Issues. A Mexican adventure." "Catchy title," Chloe said, settling onto the bar stool next to mine. "Could use some work on the subtitle, though. Maybe A Tale of Betrayal, Budget Airlines, and Bad Decisions." I laughed, and it felt good. Weird, but good. Like my face had forgotten how to do anything except look confused and mildly panicked for the past 2 hours. Chloe gestured to my phone, where the embassy website was still pulled up. You're going about this the hard way. The embassy can't really do much unless she stole your passport, which I'm guessing she didn't. I checked my wallet, relieved to find my passport still there. No, she left me that. And apparently a hotel room for another week that I definitely can't afford on my own.
Okay, so here's what you do, Chloe said, pulling out her own phone with the efficiency of someone who'd solved problems in foreign countries before. First, we get you a temporary room you can actually afford. There's a decent place 2 blocks from here. Clean, cheap, no bed bugs. Then, we deal with getting you a flight home that doesn't cost your firstborn child. And maybe, if you're interested, we get you some tacos. Because nobody should deal with spousal abandonment on an empty stomach. I stared at her, this complete stranger who was being kinder to me in 5 minutes than my wife had been in the past 24 hours. Why are you helping me? Chloe shrugged, closing her laptop. Because my ex once left me at an airport because he said I walk too slow. Took me a week to realize that wasn't a flaw in my character, it was a blessing in disguise. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, you know? Might as well help someone else figure that out faster than I did. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. Miss you already. Face blowing kiss. 2 hearts. I showed it to Chloe, who made a face like she'd just tasted something expired. Yeah, she said flatly, you're gonna need those tacos. And honestly, she was right. Turns out Chloe Garcia wasn't just blowing smoke when she said she could help. Within an hour, this woman I'd met exactly 60 minutes ago had found me a hotel room that didn't require selling a kidney, helped me fill out some kind of form for the airline that might, emphasis on might, get me a flight change without bankrupting me, and was currently leading me through the streets of Cancun toward what she promised were life-changing tacos. I was skeptical about the life-changing part, mostly because my life had already changed pretty dramatically in the past few hours, and I wasn't sure tacos could compete with spousal abandonment on the transformation scale. But I was hungry, exhausted, and following a stranger through Mexico seemed like exactly the kind of decision-making I was capable of right now. Chloe had this energy about her that I can only describe as aggressively competent, like she'd seen enough chaos in her life that nothing really fazed her anymore. She walked with purpose, dodged street vendors with practiced ease, and somehow managed to look completely at home while I was still trying to remember if I'd put on deodorant that morning. So, she said, as we navigated around a group of tourists taking selfies with a street performer dressed as a Mayan warrior, how long have you and the disappearing wife been married? 3 years, I said, stepping over a puddle that may or may not have been water. 3 years of what I thought was marriage, but was apparently just me being the audience for her one-woman show of chaos. Chloe laughed. That same genuine laugh from earlier. Oh man, I know that feeling. My ex used to call himself spontaneous. I called him unemployed and irresponsible. But potato, potato. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even need to look to know it was Jessica. She'd been texting every 15 minutes like clockwork. Each message somehow more oblivious than the last. I pulled it out anyway, because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. Don't be mad. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Come on, lighten up. You're too serious. Everyone at home thinks this is hilarious. Face with tears of joy. I showed the screen to Chloe, who made a sound that was half laugh, half disgusted snort. Everyone at home thinks it's hilarious. Who's everyone? Her other personality? The voices in her head? Probably her mom, I muttered. That woman thinks Jessica walks on water, could literally commit arson, and her mom would be like, oh, she's just being creative with fire. Chloe steered me into a small taco stand that looked like it had been there since the beginning of time. The kind of place that had exactly 3 items on the menu and made all of them perfectly. No Instagram-worthy neon signs, no cutesy decorations,
Just an older woman behind a grill who looked at us like she could see into our souls and found mine particularly pathetic. Dos al pastor, uno carnitas, Chloe ordered without hesitation, then looked at me. You're not vegetarian or anything, right? At this point, I'd eat cardboard if someone served it with enough hot sauce, I said. The woman behind the grill cracked what might have been a smile and got to work. We sat at a wobbly plastic table on the sidewalk, and I typed out a response to Jessica, then deleted it. Typed another one, deleted that too. Chloe watched me with the expression of someone who'd been exactly where I was. You want my advice? She asked. I feel like you're going to give it whether I want it or not. True. Don't respond. Not yet. Let her sit in the silence for a while. Let her wonder if you're mad or hurt or just done. Right now, she thinks this is all part of her hilarious prank. She needs to realize it's not. I stared at my phone, at those messages with their stupid emojis, and realized Chloe was right. Every time I responded, even with anger, I was playing Jessica's game. I was being the audience, the straight man to her comedy routine, the person who cleaned up her messes and made excuses for her behavior. I put my phone face down on the table. Okay, radio silence it is. Good man, Chloe said as the tacos arrived. Now eat. You look like a strong breeze could knock you over. She wasn't wrong. I'd been running on adrenaline and coffee since 6 a.m., and it was starting to catch up with me. I took a bite of the al pastor taco and understood immediately why Chloe had used the phrase life-changing. It was perfectly seasoned, the pineapple adding just the right amount of sweetness, the meat tender and flavorful. For about 30 seconds, I forgot I was an abandoned husband eating his feelings on a sidewalk in Mexico. Right, Chloe said, watching my face. I told you. You weren't lying, I admitted. These are legitimately incredible. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, which was weird because I just met this woman, and usually I'm terrible at silence with people I don't know. But Chloe had this way of making everything feel normal, like sitting on a curb eating tacos was just another Tuesday. Can I ask you something? I said between bites. Why are you being so nice to me? I mean, you literally just met me.
I could be a serial killer or a timeshare salesman or something equally terrible. Chloe wiped her hands on a napkin and considered the question. Honestly, because when I was going through my breakup, I was alone in Prague trying to figure out how to get home with a maxed-out credit card and a shattered sense of reality. A random bartender helped me out. Didn't ask for anything in return, just helped because he could. I swore if I ever saw someone in a similar situation, I'd pay it forward. So I'm like, your good karma project? More like my fellow survivor of relationship disasters project, she corrected. Plus, I'm a travel writer. This is literally going to make great content. How to survive being abandoned in paradise? A guide? I laughed despite myself. You're going to write about this? Oh, absolutely. With your permission, obviously. I'll change the names to protect the guilty, she grinned. Your wife is going to be Karen, the universal name for people who think the rules don't apply to them. Perfect. She'd hate that. I took another bite of taco, feeling something shift in my chest. Not happiness exactly, but maybe the absence of the constant low-level anxiety I've been carrying for years. You know what's weird? I haven't felt this relaxed in months, maybe years. I'm literally stranded in a foreign country. My marriage is probably over. I have no idea how I'm getting home, and somehow I feel better than I did yesterday. Chloe nodded like this made perfect sense. That's because yesterday you were managing someone else's chaos. Today, you're just dealing with regular problems that have actual solutions. Big difference. My phone buzzed again and again and again. Jessica was apparently escalating from confused to concerned. Alex, seriously, answer me. This isn't funny anymore. Why aren't you responding? Chloe glanced at my phone. How long do you think before she realizes she messed up? Honestly, I'm not sure she will. Self-awareness isn't really her strong suit. I finished my taco and leaned back in the plastic chair. She once rear-ended someone in a parking lot and spent 20 minutes explaining to the other driver why it was actually their fault for being parked there. Jesus. Yeah, and I stood there nodding along like that made sense, like I was her backup singer in the performance of Nothing Is Ever My Fault, the musical. Well, Chloe said, standing up and stretching, consider this your retirement from that show. Come on, let's get you checked into that hotel, and then maybe we can actually enjoy the city. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because someone else needed you to? I thought about it and couldn't remember. Every vacation, every weekend, every free moment had been spent either managing Jessica's latest crisis or preventing the next one. I'd become so good at anticipating her needs that I'd forgotten I had my own. I honestly can't remember, I admitted. Then we're starting today, Chloe declared. Rule number 1 of being a functional human, occasionally do things that make you happy. Radical concept, I know. We walked back through the streets of Cancun. And for the first time since I'd woken up that morning, I wasn't thinking about Jessica or the mess waiting for me back home. I was just walking, eating excellent tacos, talking to someone who treated kindness like it wasn't a limited resource. My phone buzzed one more time. I looked at it, saw another desperate message from Jessica, and did something I'd never done before. I turned off the notifications. Chloe saw and gave me an approving nod. Look at you, setting boundaries. I'm so proud I might cry. Don't, I said. I'm barely holding it together as it is. But I was smiling, actually smiling. And somewhere between the tacos and the sunshine and Chloe's matter-of-fact kindness, I started to think that maybe being abandoned in Mexico wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to me. Maybe it was exactly what I needed. The next morning, Chloe convinced me to actually explore Cancun instead of sitting in my budget hotel room spiraling into an existential crisis. She had this whole philosophy about how wallowing was fine for like an hour max, but after that you were just marinating in your own misery, and that helped nobody. Come on, she'd said, banging on my door at 8 a.m. like some kind of motivational drill sergeant. I'm taking you to the local markets, real Mexico, not the resort gift shop version where they charge $40 for a shot glass. So there I was, wandering through narrow streets lined with vendors selling everything from hand-painted pottery to questionable knockoff designer bags, following a woman I'd known for less than 24 hours, who somehow felt more reliable than my wife of 3 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Chloe was in her element, chatting with vendors in Spanish that was way better than my Honde Estande nonsense, haggling over prices with a smile, showing me which stalls had the good stuff versus the tourist traps. And somewhere between watching her negotiate over a woven blanket and sampling fresh mango from a street cart, my brain decided it was time for a highlight reel of all the red flags I'd ignored in my marriage. You know that thing where you're fine until you're not, and then suddenly your brain is like, hey, remember that time? And proceeds to dump 3 years of suppressed memories on you like an emotional avalanche? Yeah, that happened. First memory, Thanksgiving, year 2 of our marriage. I'd spent the entire day before grocery shopping for what I thought was going to be a quiet dinner for 2, maybe her parents if they were in town. I bought a turkey, the fancy stuffing mix, 3 kinds of pie because I couldn't decide, the whole Norman Rockwell painting setup. I was feeling pretty good about myself, honestly, domestic as hell. I came home from work that Wednesday to find Jessica had invited 40 people over. 40! She'd posted about it on Facebook while I was in a meeting and apparently just assumed I'd be cool with feeding a small army on 24 hours' notice. Surprise, she'd said, like this was a gift and not a logistical nightmare. I thought it would be more fun with people. You're always saying we should be more social. I'd said that once about maybe inviting our neighbors over for coffee, not about hosting a refugee camp's worth of people for a major holiday. I'd spent that entire Thanksgiving running between the kitchen and the dining room like a deranged caterer, while Jessica held court in the living room, telling everyone how spontaneous and fun she was. 3 people had asked me where the bathroom was. One guy I'd never met ate the last slice of pumpkin pie I'd been saving. I'd smiled through the whole thing because that's what you do, right? You don't make a scene, you don't tell your wife in front of 40 near strangers that maybe a heads up would have been nice. "You okay?" Chloe asked, pulling me out of the memory. "You just made a face like you bit into a lemon." "Just remembering stuff," I said. "Bad stuff. Marriage stuff." "Ah, the greatest hits collection," Chloe said knowingly. "Let me guess. You're suddenly remembering all the times she did something ridiculous and you just went along with it." Bingo. I picked up a small ceramic turtle from one of the stalls, turning it over in my hands. "How'd you know?" "Because that's what happens when someone shows you who they really are and you finally believe them. All those little moments you explained away start looking different in hindsight." She bought the turtle and handed it to me. "Here, something to remember this trip by that isn't emotional trauma." I pocketed the turtle and kept walking, but my brain wasn't done with me yet. Memory number 2, the pottery wheel incident. We'd been saving for a trip to Italy. Nothing crazy, just a week in Rome, maybe Florence. I'd been putting money aside from every paycheck for 6 months. Had a whole spreadsheet tracking our progress, because I'm that kind of person. We were so close. Another 2 months and we'd have enough for flights and a decent hotel. I came home one day to find a pottery wheel in our living room. A full-size professional-grade pottery wheel that cost roughly the same as 2 round-trip tickets to Europe. It was on sale, Jessica had explained, already covered in clay, looking at me like I was the crazy one for not being excited. I've always wanted to try pottery. This is me investing in my creativity. The pottery wheel got used exactly 3 times before it became a very expensive side table. We never made it to Italy. I'd started the savings fund over, but then the transmission went out in her car, and then her sister needed help with rent, and then there was always something. The Italy fund became the whatever Jessica needs right now fund, which was apparently its destiny all along. "Oh man, you just made another face," Chloe observed. "What was this one?" "Let me guess. She made a major purchase without telling you?" "Pottery wheel," I said. "Killed our Italy trip. Used it 3 times." Chloe winced. "Ouch." "Yeah, my ex bought a motorcycle with our wedding fund. Said we could just get married at the courthouse instead, because marriage is about love, not expensive parties. Then he left me for someone he met at a biker rally, so I guess he was half right." "That's awful." I got a good blog post out of it and learned to never date anyone whose idea of financial planning is, "it'll work out." She steered us toward a taco stand. Apparently, her solution to everything involved tacos, which honestly I wasn't mad about. "The pottery wheel become a family heirloom, or does it haunt your living room?" "Side table," I admitted. "She stacked mail on it for a year before I finally sold it on Craigslist." Of course she did. Chloe ordered for both of us without asking, which should have been annoying, but somehow wasn't. What else? I can tell you're on a roll. Memory number 3 hit me while we were waiting for the tacos. The great wine incident. We bought this couch together, one of the few things we'd actually agreed on. It was cream-colored, which I'd argued against because cream-colored anything in a house was just asking for trouble. But Jessica loved it. Said it made the room feel elevated and sophisticated, whatever that meant. It cost more than my first car. 3 months later, she spilled an entire bottle of red wine on it during a party. Not a glass, a bottle, the full-sized, plenty of alcohol content kind of bottle. And instead of, I don't know, apologizing or even acknowledging it was a bummer, she just laughed and declared that it gave the couch character.
Like the couch was a protagonist in a coming-of-age novel instead of an expensive piece of furniture now sporting what looked like a crime scene. I'd spent the next week trying every carpet cleaner known to man, while Jessica posted pictures of the stained couch on Instagram with captions about embracing imperfection and living authentically. She got 200 likes. The couch never recovered. It gave it character, I muttered out loud without meaning to. What? She spilled red wine on our expensive couch and said it gave it character? I spent a week trying to clean it, and she acted like I was being uptight for caring.
Chloe stopped walking and looked at me with an expression that was half sympathy, half wanting to reach through time and shake past me. Alex, buddy, that's not quirky. That's just being inconsiderate and then gaslighting you about it. I know that now, I said, but at the time I thought I was being too rigid. She always made me feel like I was the problem for having, normal expectations about how adults behave. The tacos arrived and we found a spot to sit, this time on an actual bench instead of a curb, which felt like progress. Chloe was quiet for a minute, just eating and thinking, which I appreciated. Not everything needed immediate commentary. "You want to know what I think?" she finally said. "I feel like I'm about to find out either way." She smiled. "Fair. I think you've been living with someone who used spontaneous as an excuse for I don't want to consider how my actions affect other people. And I think you've been so busy being understanding and flexible and accommodating that you forgot you're allowed to expect basic respect from your partner." That hit harder than it should have, or maybe exactly as hard as it needed to. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think you're right. Of course I'm right. I'm always right. It's my best and most annoying quality." She bumped my shoulder with hers. "But hey, look at the bright side. You're figuring this out now, instead of 20 years from now when you've got a mortgage and kids and even more reasons to stay in something that makes you miserable." My phone buzzed. It had been doing that less frequently, like Jessica was starting to realize that her usual tactics weren't working. I glanced at it. "I'm starting to get worried. This isn't like you." I showed it to Chloe, who snorted. "Not like you. Not like you to what? Except being abandoned in Mexico with Grace. She's really doubling down on the gaslighting, huh?" "It's her specialty," I said, putting the phone away. "That and rewriting history until she's always the victim." Well, she's about to learn that you can't gaslight someone from 1,000 miles away when they've got a friend who sees through the nonsense. Chloe finished her taco and wiped her hands decisively. "Come on, we're going to the beach. You're going to sit in the sun, drink something with an umbrella in it, and remember what it feels like to exist without managing someone else's chaos." Is that an order? Absolutely. I'm very bossy when I'm right, which, as I mentioned, is always. We headed toward the beach, and with every step I felt a little lighter, like I was physically walking away from 3 years of making excuses, of cleaning up messes, of pretending that chaos was the same thing as charm. Chloe called it out simply as we hit the sand. "You've been living with a performance artist, and the performance was emotional chaos." I nearly choked on the coconut water I just bought. That's exactly what it was. Oh my God. I was the audience paying for the tickets. Exactly. And now she spread her arms wide, gesturing at the ocean. "Now you're a free man in Mexico with a new friend, good tacos, and the chance to figure out who you are when you're not playing supporting actor in someone else's drama." I sat down in the sand, watching the waves, feeling the sun, and thought about pottering wheels and wine-stained couches and 40 unexpected Thanksgiving guests. All those moments I'd explained away, minimized, accommodated. All those red flags I'd painted green in my mind. Not anymore. Day 3 of my Mexican exile started the same way Day 2 ended, with Jessica blowing up my phone like it was her full-time job. The difference was, by Day 3, I'd stopped even looking at the notifications. They'd just become background noise, like cicadas in summer, or that one car alarm that goes off every night at 2 a.m. and everyone just learns to ignore. I was having breakfast at a cafe Chloe had recommended. Real coffee, actual food, no existential dread included. When my phone started vibrating so hard it nearly fell off the table. I glanced at the screen and saw Jessica's face, the photo from our wedding, where she looked absolutely perfect and I looked like I'd been caught mid-sneeze. Fitting, really. I declined the call and took another bite of my chilaquiles. 30 seconds later, she called again and again and again. It was like playing whack-a-mole, except the mole was my wife's total inability to accept that I wasn't playing her game anymore. The texts started coming in rapid fire, each one a masterclass in missing the point. "You're not seriously mad, right? Everyone's laughing. You should too. Come on, Alex, don't be dramatic. Fine, I'll book you another flight. Don't be like this." Like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I was the one who'd committed what was essentially a federal offense against marriage. Classic Jessica. Reframe everything until she's the reasonable one and you're the stick in the mud for having feelings about being wronged. I screenshot the messages and sent them to Chloe with the caption, "She's spiraling." Chloe's response came back immediately. "Good. Let her spiral. She's earned it." I smiled and ordered another coffee. Chloe was meeting me later to check out some Mayan ruins, which sounded way more interesting than engaging with whatever Olympic-level mental gymnastics Jessica was performing back in Illinois. My phone rang again. This time it was Mark Davis, my best friend since college, and the only person who'd consistently told me that Jessica was a lot, even when I wasn't ready to hear it. I answered, grateful for a call that didn't come with manipulation attached. "Dude," Mark said before I could even say hello. "Dude, she left you in another country. Who does that?" "My wife," I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Or maybe my soon-to-be ex-wife. I haven't decided yet." "Haven't decided, Alex? She abandoned you internationally. That's not oopsie, forgot to tell you I changed the flights. That's I need a lawyer and possibly a restraining order territory." I know. I watched a group of tourists walk by, all wearing matching t-shirts that said squad trip in glitter letters. Even they probably had better travel partners than I did. I'm just trying to process everything, you know? 3 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate because of one massively insane thing. No, but it should make you look back at all the other massively insane things and connect the dots, Mark said. I could hear him typing in the background, probably at work, but too invested in my drama to care. Man, that's not a prank. That's a therapy starter pack. That's a Netflix documentary waiting to happen. Wife Gone Wild, a story of international abandonment.
I laughed despite myself. Chloe said something similar, except she called Jessica a performance artist specializing in emotional chaos. Chloe? Who's Chloe? Travel writer I met at the hotel. She's been helping me navigate the whole stranded in Mexico thing, getting me cheap rooms, showing me around, keeping me from completely losing it. There was a pause on Mark's end. "Okay, don't take this the wrong way, but is Chloe single?" "Mark, I'm just saying, you're in Mexico. Your wife just revealed herself to be a cartoon villain, and some kind stranger is helping you. That's literally the plot of every rom-com ever made." "It's not like that," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure what it was like. "She's just being nice, paying forward some kindness someone showed her during her own breakup." "Uh-huh. And she's doing this out of the pure goodness of her heart?" "Yes. Not everyone has ulterior motives, Mark. Some people are just decent human beings who help other decent human beings when they're in bad situations." "Fair enough," Mark conceded. "But if you two end up falling in love over tacos and sunset walks, I'm calling it now so I can say I told you so at your wedding." "There's not going to be a wedding. I'm still technically married, remember?" "Technically" is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. My friend, we talked for a few more minutes about logistics, whether I needed money, if my boss was cool with me extending my time off, whether I should just cut my losses and come home now versus staying. Mark was firmly in the stay and figure your life out camp, which honestly surprised me. I'd expected him to tell me to get on the next flight and deal with everything like an adult. "Nah, man," he said when I told him this. "You never take time for yourself, ever. You're always managing Jessica's latest crisis, or covering for her, or explaining her to people. Take the week. Hell, take the month if you can swing it. Figure out what you want when her chaos isn't drowning out everything else."
After we hung up, I sat there feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Supported. Not just by Mark, but by Chloe. By this whole weird situation that had forced me to stop and actually think about my life instead of just surviving it. My phone rang again. This time, it was my sister, Laura Evans, and I knew from experience that she was about to bring a level of righteous fury that even Jessica wouldn't be prepared for. "Alex, Benjamin Evans," she said in that voice that meant I was either in trouble or someone else was about to be. "I just talked to Mom. She just talked to Jessica's mom. What in the actual hell is happening?" "So you heard? 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 Alex, she abandoned you in Mexico. That's not heard. That's what the hell territory." Laura had never liked Jessica, not from day one. She'd smiled through the wedding and been polite at family gatherings, but I knew. Sisters always know. "I swear to God, I'm going to drive to her house." "And Laura, don't. It's not worth it. Not worth it. She committed what I'm pretty sure is at least 3 different crimes. Theft, maybe kidnapping, definitely being a garbage human being. That last one isn't a crime. It should be." I could hear her pacing, which she always did when she was worked up. "Alex, you've been making excuses for her for 3 years. 3 years of, oh, she's just spontaneous, and that's just how she is, and she doesn't mean it that way. And all of us have been biting our tongues because you seemed happy, or at least happy-ish, and we figured you knew what you were doing. Turns out, I didn't," I admitted quietly. Laura's voice softened. "No, you didn't. But that's not your fault. You're a good person who assumed the person you married was also a good person. That's not naive. That's just human. But Alex," she paused for emphasis, "you always said she was just quirky. Quirky people don't commit international abandonment. Quirky people collect stamps or learn to juggle or wear mismatched socks. They don't steal your flight and leave you in another country." "I know. Do you? Because you've been cleaning up her messes for so long. I'm not sure you know where her chaos ends and your life begins." That hit hard. Mostly because it was exactly what Chloe had said yesterday and what Mark had implied and what I've been slowly realizing over the past 3 days of actually having space to think. "I'm figuring it out," I said. "Being down here away from all of it, it's like I can finally see everything clearly. All the stuff I explained away or minimized or just accepted because that's what you do in a marriage." "No," Laura said firmly, "that's not what you do in a marriage. In a marriage, both people care about each other's feelings. Both people consider how their actions affect their partner. Both people don't treat abandonment like it's a hilarious prank. When you put it that way, it sounds really bad." "That's because it is really bad, Alex. Like divorce lawyer bad. Like tell everyone what she did so they stop thinking she's quirky and start seeing she's terrible bad." I laughed despite the heaviness of the conversation. "You really don't like her, huh?" "I didn't like her before she pulled this stunt. Now, I'm pretty sure if I saw her, I'd throw something. Nothing heavy, just like a shoe or maybe a salad, something that makes a point without catching a charge. Please don't assault my wife with produce." "No promises," Laura said, but I could hear the smile in her voice. "Seriously, though, what are you going to do right now? Stay here for the rest of the week. Think, breathe, eat tacos with Chloe." "Chloe? Why does everyone keep asking about Chloe like that?" "Because when a man's wife abandons him and he immediately mentions another woman's name multiple times, people notice. She's just a friend who's helping me out." "Uh-huh. Is she single?" "Oh my God, you and Mark need to start a support group or something." But I was smiling. "Yes, she's single. No, nothing is happening. I'm still married to the woman who left me here, remember?" "Barely married," Laura corrected. "Technically married. Married in name. Only married. You're the second person to point out that technicality today." That's because it's an important technicality, Laura said. Look, I'm not saying jump into something new. I'm just saying don't jump back into something that's been slowly killing you for 3 years. You deserve better than someone who thinks your feelings are punchlines. After we hung up, I ordered another coffee, my third, but who was counting, and looked at my phone. 71 missed calls from Jessica. 71! The woman had called me 71 times in 3 days and still somehow thought she was the reasonable one in this situation. The final text sat there, all caps, punctuation abuse.
Who is Chloe? I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled, typed out one word: logistics. Her response was immediate. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Let her sit with that. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of the confusion and frustration I'd felt 3 days ago when I woke up abandoned. Chloe arrived at the cafe right on time, sunglasses on, ready for our Mayan ruins adventure. She slid into the seat across from me and immediately clocked my expression. You told her about me, didn't you? Maybe mentioned your name once and she's losing her mind like it's an Olympic sport and she's going for gold. Chloe laughed and raised her coffee cup to Chaos Chickens Coming Home to Roost. I clinked my cup against hers. 2 Chaos Chickens. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like maybe I wasn't the one cleaning up after them. On the 5th morning of my unplanned Mexican sabbatical, I woke up before my alarm and didn't immediately feel that familiar knot of anxiety in my chest. You know the one. The feeling that something's wrong, or about to go wrong, or needs to be fixed before it goes wrong. The feeling I'd been waking up with for 3 years straight without even realizing it had become my normal. I sat up in bed in my budget hotel room that smelled faintly like cleaning solution and ocean air, and I felt nothing. Not happy exactly. Not sad. Just calm. Like my nervous system had finally figured out it didn't need to be on high alert 24/7 anymore. My phone was still on Do Not Disturb, which meant Jessica's increasingly unhinged messages were piling up in digital purgatory where they belonged. I ignored them and got dressed, grabbed a notebook I'd bought from a street vendor yesterday, and headed to the balcony that overlooked the beach. The sun was just starting to come up, painting everything in shades of pink and orange that would have looked fake if someone had tried to describe them. A few early risers were already on the beach, jogging or doing yoga, or just standing there with their coffee watching the waves. Normal people doing normal things, living lives that probably didn't involve spousal abandonment or international drama. I opened the notebook to a fresh page and stared at it for a minute. Then I wrote at the top, "Things I won't do again." It felt dramatic, like something you'd see in a movie montage where the protagonist has their big revelation moment set to an indie rock song. But I didn't care. I needed to get this out of my head and onto paper before I could talk myself out of it or convince myself I was overreacting. Number 1 wrote itself. Apologize for someone else's stupidity. I'd spent 3 years apologizing to people for Jessica's behavior. Sorry she's late. Sorry she forgot about your party. Sorry she made that joke about your haircut. Sorry she used your bathroom and reorganized your medicine cabinet because she thought it would be helpful. Sorry, 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 always sorry, like I was her PR representative instead of her husband. Number 2, call manipulation spontaneity. That one hurt to write because it meant acknowledging how much I'd been lying to myself. Every time she pulled something without warning, I called it spontaneous. Every time she made a decision that affected both of us without consulting me, I told myself she was just creative and free-spirited. I'd rebranded red flags as quirks until I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Number 3, book joint vacations without insurance. Too soon, maybe, but also painfully relevant. I was working on number 4 when Chloe appeared in the doorway to the balcony carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. She'd somehow gotten a key to my room, which should have been concerning, but at this point, I'd given up trying to understand how she made things happen. The woman had connections. "Planning your escape?" she asked, handing me one of the coffees and settling into the plastic chair next to mine.
Redefining it, I said, showing her the notebook, making a list of things I'm not doing anymore once I get back to reality. She read over my shoulder, nodding appreciatively. This is good, healthy, very new year, new me, except it's not January and you actually mean it. You think I mean it? I think you're the kind of person who makes lists and then follows through on them, unlike some people who just blow up their lives without a plan and then wonder why everything's on fire. She took a sip of her coffee. What's number 4? I thought about it, pen hovering over the page. Stop accepting "that's just how I am" as an excuse for bad behavior. Chloe made an approving noise. Oh, that's a good one. That's the whole enchilada right there. People love to hide behind "that's just how I am," like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card for being terrible, right? Like, cool, well, that's how you are. And how I am is someone who doesn't want to deal with that anymore. Exactly. Chloe gestured with her coffee cup enthusiastically. See, you're getting it. You're having your moment. I'm so proud. I might cry. Please don't. My emotional bandwidth is maxed out as it is. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the sun finish its dramatic entrance over the ocean. A family was setting up on the beach below, kids already running toward the water, while parents hauled umbrellas and coolers. Normal family vacation stuff. The kind of vacation where nobody gets abandoned. Can I add something to your list? Chloe asked. Go for it. Stop booking joint vacations with people who might strand you in foreign countries. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That's fair. That's very fair. Consider it added. Good. I hate people who use adventure as an excuse for bad behavior. Like, no, Karen, abandoning your husband isn't adventurous, it's just mean. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it and saw I'd gotten a text from Mark. Jessica just posted a 3-paragraph Facebook status about marriage and communication. It's the most passive-aggressive thing I've ever read. Want me to screenshot it? I typed back, absolutely, yes. The screenshot came through 30 seconds later, and I nearly choked. The post started with, "Sometimes in marriage, we have to remember that people process things differently," and went downhill from there. It was a masterclass in making herself sound reasonable while subtly implying I was being dramatic and childish for not finding her prank funny. The comments were even better. Most people were confused about what she was vaguely referencing, but the ones who'd gotten the full story? Because they were not having it. Mark's girlfriend, Sarah. Girl, you left him in Mexico. That's not a communication issue. That's a you issue. My cousin Beth. If by process things differently, you mean be justifiably upset about international abandonment, then yeah, I guess Alex is processing differently. Even Jessica's own college friend had chimed in. This feels like missing reasons. The Facebook post. I showed the phone to Chloe, who read through the comments with increasing delight. Oh, wow, she said. She really thought this would make her look good, huh? She thought people would be on her side. Apparently, she's always been able to spin things to make herself the victim. Usually works too. Not this time, though. Chloe zoomed in on one particular comment from someone named Jennifer. Just so we're clear, you changed his flight without telling him and left him in another country, and you think he's overreacting? Girl, get help. I like Jennifer, I said. Jennifer gets it. Jennifer is the MVP. Chloe agreed. She handed my phone back and stood up. Come on, let's go get breakfast. You can add to your list later, but right now you need to eat something that isn't emotional processing. We ended up at a little place Chloe knew that served chilaquiles that could make you forget your own name. While we ate, I kept adding to my mental list of things I wouldn't do anymore. Stop making excuses when people pointed out concerning behavior. Stop prioritizing keeping the peace over being honest. Stop treating my own needs like they were optional extras in my marriage. You know what's weird? I said between bites. I feel guilty. Like I'm sitting here in Mexico eating amazing food, hanging out with you, and I feel guilty that I'm not more upset.
That's Stockholm Syndrome, Chloe said matter-of-factly. We're like the relationship equivalent. You've been in crisis mode for so long that not being in crisis feels wrong. That's depressing. Super depressing, but also fixable. You just need to retrain your brain to understand that peace is actually the normal state, and chaos is the aberration, not the other way around. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. This one shorter than usual. I don't understand why you're being like this. I stared at it for a long moment, then showed it to Chloe. You gonna respond? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to lay out exactly why I'm being like this in excruciating detail, but the other part knows she won't actually hear it. She'll just find a way to make it about her feelings. So don't respond, Chloe suggested. Not everything deserves a response, especially not when someone's proven they're not actually asking a question. They're just demanding you validate their version of events. She was right. Jessica didn't want to understand. She wanted me to tell her it was okay, that I forgave her, that we could laugh about this someday. She wanted me to go back to being the person who cleaned up her messes and called them adventures. I put my phone face down on the table and went back to my chilaquiles. Added another line to my mental list. Stop explaining myself to people who aren't actually listening. Look at you, Chloe said, raising her coffee cup. Setting boundaries, having standards, not immediately folding like a lawn chair. I'm so proud. I might actually cry this time.
You keep threatening to cry, but I haven't seen any tears yet. I'm holding them back through sheer force of will. I'm very tough. We finished breakfast and spent the rest of the morning walking through the city, not going anywhere in particular, just existing in space without crisis or drama or someone needing something from me. At one point, Chloe stopped to take pictures of a street art mural, and I just stood there watching her work, realizing this was what normal felt like. Not exciting, not adventurous, just normal. And after 3 years of Jessica's chaos, normal felt absolutely revolutionary. Later that afternoon, we ended up back at my hotel, sitting on that balcony with the ocean view. I'd filled up 3 pages in my notebook by then. Things I wouldn't do, things I wanted to do, things I'd forgotten I even liked because Jessica's preferences had always taken up all the oxygen in the room. You know what's funny, I said, watching the sunset start to happen. For 3 years, I thought I was being a good husband by accommodating everything, by being flexible, by not making waves. Turns out I was just teaching her that my boundaries didn't matter. Chloe looked up from her laptop where she'd been working on an article. That's the thing nobody tells you about relationships. Being accommodating is good until it becomes being a doormat. There's a line, and most people don't realize they've crossed it until they're so far on the wrong side they can't even see the line anymore. Where was this wisdom 3 years ago? Probably in Prague, crying over my own doormat situation and learning these lessons the hard way. My phone buzzed one more time. I looked at it, saw another message from Jessica, and did something I'd never done before. I opened my notebook, wrote one final line. Next time, I'm escaping on purpose, and put my phone away without reading the message. Chloe noticed and smiled. Progress. Yeah, I said, meaning it. I think so. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't Jessica's safety net or cleanup crew or audience. I was just me. And me was doing pretty damn good, all things considered. By day 7, I'd found something I didn't even know I'd been missing. Peace. Not the everything's fine kind of peace that's really just denial wearing a happy mask, but actual, genuine, wake up and don't immediately check your phone for disasters peace. The kind where you can hear your own thoughts without someone else's chaos drowning them out. Jessica's texts had gone through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of grief, except instead of acceptance at the end, she'd landed somewhere between bargaining and straight-up denial. It was like watching someone speedrun every manipulation tactic in the handbook. Day 1 had been smug. It was hilarious. You should have seen your face. Day 3 was confusion. Why aren't you answering? This isn't funny anymore. Day 5 brought panic. "Alex, please, I'm getting worried. Just let me know you're okay." And now, day 7, we'd arrived at what I like to call the spiritual bypassing phase. "I've been praying about this. God told me to call you." I stared at that last message while eating breakfast at my favorite cafe. God told her to call me? God, the almighty creator of the universe, apparently had nothing better to do than get involved in Jessica's self-created drama. I wondered if God had also told her that abandoning your spouse in a foreign country was a bad idea, or if that message got lost in translation. I showed the text to Chloe, who'd become my unofficial breakfast companion and life coach over the past week. "Oh wow," she said, reading it over her coffee cup. "We've reached the Jesus phase of her breakdown. That's new, is it though? She does this thing where she claims divine intervention whenever she wants something. Like when she bought that pottery wheel, she said God put it on her heart." "God's got terrible financial advice then," Chloe said, stealing a piece of my toast. "What are you gonna do?" "Nothing," I said, and realized I meant it. "I'm going to sit here, eat this incredible breakfast, and then we're going to Tulum like we planned. Her spiritual crisis is not my emergency." Chloe raised her coffee cup. "Look at you having boundaries. My little student is all grown up." "I'm older than you emotionally. You're basically a toddler learning to say no. I'm very proud." We finished breakfast and headed out to Tulum, which Chloe had been hyping up all week as one of the most beautiful places in Mexico. She wasn't wrong. The ruins sat on cliffs overlooking water so blue it looked photoshopped. And for a few hours, I completely forgot about Jessica and abandoned flights and 3 years of accumulated relationship debris. Chloe and I explored the ruins, took touristy photos, and had one of those conversations that happens when you're walking through ancient history and your own life suddenly feels very small and manageable in comparison. "You know what I realized?" I said, standing at the edge of the cliff looking out at the ocean. "I haven't missed her, not once. I've been angry, confused, hurt, but I haven't actually missed Jessica herself." Chloe stood next to me, quiet for a moment. "That tells you everything you need to know." "Yeah," I said, "I think it does." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even check it. God's messages could wait. That evening, we ended up at this place with fairy lights strung between palm trees and music that made you want to stay forever. Chloe ordered for both of us. She'd figured out my taste in food after 5 days, which was more attention than Jessica had paid in 3 years. And we sat there talking about everything, except my failing marriage. She told me about her travel blog, Miles and Smiles, which she'd started after her divorce as a way to reclaim her life. The irony of the name wasn't lost on either of us. "So you're telling me," I said, "that I've been having a breakdown with someone literally named Miles and Smiles?" "The universe has a sense of humor," Chloe said, grinning. "Or really terrible timing. Could go either way. How's the blog doing?" "Good, actually. Turns out people like honest travel content that isn't just influencers pretending everything's perfect. I write about the disasters, the missed flights, the food poisoning, the hotel rooms that smell like feet. Real stuff." "Is this going to be real stuff?" I gestured vaguely at myself. "Am I going to be a blog post titled The Man Whose Wife Left Him in Cancun?" "Only with your permission," Chloe said seriously. "And I'd change all the names. You'd be Marcus or something." "Marcus? Fine, you pick. How about The Guy Who Finally Figured It Out?" Chloe smiled. "I like that. Very aspirational." When she asked if I missed Jessica, I said the truest thing I'd said all week. I missed the peace I thought she'd bring. Turns out that peace had an early checkout time. Chloe laughed so hard she nearly knocked over her drink. "That's the best breakup quote I've ever heard. I'm stealing that for the blog. Royalties appreciated." We spent the rest of the evening under those fairy lights, and I realized something. I hadn't laughed this much in years. Real laughs. The kind that come from your stomach instead of just being polite noise. With Jessica, I'd always been laughing at her jokes, her stories, her performance. With Chloe, I was just laughing because things were actually funny. My phone buzzed multiple times during dinner. By the time we left, I had 43 new messages from Jessica, each one more desperate than the last. The final one simply read, "I don't know what else to say." I typed back one sentence. "Maybe try sorry." Then I added, "Actually, don't. Save it for someone who still believes you." I didn't send the second part. Some things didn't need to be said. Walking back to the hotel, Chloe bumped my shoulder with hers. "You doing okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I really am. Is that weird that I'm doing okay while my marriage falls apart 1,000 miles away?" "Not weird at all. Sometimes things need to fall apart so better things can fall together. Besides, your marriage fell apart the moment she booked that flight. You're just finally noticing the rubble." We stopped at my hotel, and Chloe gave me this look that was half concerned, half proud. "You've changed this week, in a good way." "Yeah," I said, thinking about my notebook full of boundaries and the phone full of messages I wasn't rushing to answer. I stopped being the punchline. She smiled and started being the headline. I watched her walk away, then went up to my room and looked at my phone one more time. Jessica had called 17 more times, left voicemails I wouldn't listen to, sent texts I wouldn't read, because somewhere between the tacos and the ruins and the fairy lights, I'd realized something. She thought she'd left me behind in Mexico, but really, she just freed me. And honestly, that was the funniest part of this whole thing. On the 8th morning, I woke up and decided to be petty. Not in a destructive way, not in a burn-down-her-life kind of way, but in that delicious, perfectly justified way that feels like poetic justice wrapped in karma's gift paper. I'd been thinking about it all night. Jessica had spent the past week treating my silence like it was the unreasonable part of this equation, like I was the one being dramatic by not immediately forgiving her for what was essentially marital kidnapping with a side of gaslighting. She'd blown up my phone, posted vague Facebook statuses about communication and marriage, and even tried the God card. Nothing had worked, and I could practically feel her panic vibrating through the cellular network. So I decided to give her exactly what she'd given me: uncertainty. I opened my messages, scrolled past the absolute novel of texts she'd sent overnight. Seriously, the woman had written more words begging for attention than Tolstoy wrote in War and Peace, and typed out one simple sentence: "Thanks for this. Chloe has been the sweetest." I read it over 3 times, making sure it hit exactly the right note of casual and cryptic. Not mean, not cruel, just informative. Then I hit send and waited. The response time was genuinely impressive. My phone started ringing before I could even set it down. Once, twice, 3 times. I declined each call with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for crossing the last item off your to-do list or finding $20 in your coat pocket. The texts started coming like machine gun fire. "Who is Chloe? Alex, answer me. What does that even mean? Are you serious right now?" I took a sip of my coffee, the good stuff from the cafe, not the hotel room sadness water, and smiled. Chloe walked in right on cue, somehow already knowing I'd pulled the trigger on what we'd been joking about calling Operation Make Her Sweat. "You did it, didn't you? I might have mentioned your name." And she's losing her mind. I showed her my phone, which was now actively having a seizure with incoming notifications. Chloe's eyes got wider with each message. "Oh my God, she called you 71 times in 30 seconds. 73 now. She's persistent, I'll give her that." Chloe sat down across from me, looking at my phone like it was a particularly fascinating science experiment. "What are you going to do?" "Let her cook," I said, using the phrase Mark had taught me last night during our phone call. Let her sit with the exact feeling she gave me when I woke up to that goodbye text. My phone rang again and again. The voicemails were piling up like snow in a blizzard, each one probably more unhinged than the last. I could practically hear Jessica spiraling from 1,000 miles away, which was exactly the right distance for me to be from a Jessica spiral. "You're kind of enjoying this," Chloe observed. "Is that bad?" "Nah, watching karma work in real time is underrated entertainment. Plus, you've earned some petty revenge. You've been taking the high road for a week. Sometimes you need to take the scenic route through mess around and find out territory. I let a few more hours pass, during which Jessica's messages evolved from angry to panic to something that could only be described as a full breakdown. This isn't funny. You're scaring me. Is Chloe the reason you're ignoring me? I can't believe you do this to me. That last one made me actually laugh out loud. She couldn't believe I'd do this to her? The woman who literally abandoned me in another country was upset that I'd made a vague reference to another human woman? The audacity was truly Olympic level. Around noon, I finally picked up. Not because I felt bad, but because I wanted to hear her reaction in real time. "Alex?" Jessica practically screamed into the phone. "Who the hell is Chloe?" "Chloe," I said calmly, like we were discussing the weather. "She's been helping me out this week, since I got stranded and all." "Helping you out? What does that mean?" "It means she's been making sure I don't starve or get lost or have a complete mental breakdown while dealing with the fact that my wife committed what I'm pretty sure is a federal offense." "Don't be dramatic," Jessica snapped, and I could hear her pacing. She always paced when she was losing an argument. "I didn't commit a federal offense. It was a prank that you're blowing out of proportion." "Right, my bad. International abandonment is totally prank territory, right up there with whoopee cushions and fake lottery tickets." "Alex, is Chloe single?" I could hear her trying a different tactic. "Is something going on?" "Why would that matter?" I asked innocently. "You left me here. What did you think was going to happen? That I'd just sit in a hotel room crying until you decided to care?" "That's not— I do care. I've been trying to reach you all week." "Weird how you cared so much after you stole my flight and disappeared at 3 a.m. I took another sip of coffee, enjoying this way more than I probably should have. "But yeah, tell me more about how you care." Chloe was watching me with barely contained glee, giving me 2 thumbs up like I was giving a TED Talk on standing up for yourself. "You're being cruel," Jessica said, and I could hear the tears starting. The tears always started when she realized she wasn't winning. "This isn't like you." "You're right," I said. "The old me would have apologized by now for making you feel bad about abandoning me. Lucky for you, he's currently taking a vacation from being your emotional support doormat." "Alex, is there anything else? Because Chloe and I have plans this afternoon." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear the wheels turning, her brain trying to process this version of me that didn't immediately fold. "Plans?" she finally choked out. "Yeah, plans. Those things people make when they're not managing someone else's chaos. Chloe's teaching me about them. Revolutionary concept." "I can't believe you're doing this," Jessica whispered. "Really? Because I'm pretty sure this is just me giving you back exactly what you gave me. Except I'm doing it with words instead of plane tickets." I could hear her crying now, full-on sobbing. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just nothing. Like watching a stranger cry over something that didn't involve me. "I need to know," she said between sobs. "Are you cheating on me with Chloe?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Jessica, you left me in Mexico as a prank. You don't get to ask me questions about my behavior. That ship sailed when you sailed away at 6 a.m. without me. That's not an answer." "You're right. Here's an answer. Relax. It's just a prank." Then I hung up. Chloe was staring at me with her mouth open. "Did you just use her own words against her?" Yeah, I did. That was ice cold. Was it too much? Are you kidding? That was perfect. That was poetry. That was— Chloe stood up and slow clapped. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed." My phone immediately started ringing again. I let it ring, watching Jessica's face flash on the screen over and over, and felt something shift. Not revenge exactly, more like balance. Like the scales had finally evened out, and I wasn't carrying all the weight anymore. "You know what the funny part is?" I said to Chloe. "I don't even feel bad." "That's because you shouldn't. She played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. This is just the prize ceremony. We left the cafe, and my phone kept ringing, kept buzzing, kept demanding attention it wasn't going to get. And for the first time in 8 days, maybe for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was the one in control of my own life. Jessica thought she could play games with me, and I'd just accept it. Turns out, I could play too, and I was way better at it than she expected. By the second week of my Mexican liberation, because, let's be honest, that's what it was, the narrative back home had shifted in ways that would have been hilarious if they weren't so satisfying. Apparently, Jessica's funny prank had stopped being funny to everyone except Jessica herself, and even she was starting to realize that the joke had a punchline she didn't see coming. Mark called me on day 10 with an update that made my morning coffee taste even better than usual. "Dude," he said, barely containing his laughter, "you need to hear what's happening back here. It's beautiful. It's like watching dominoes fall, except the dominoes are Jessica's reputation." "Tell me everything," I said, settling into my balcony chair with the phone on speaker so Chloe could hear. She'd become my official partner in schadenfreude, and honestly, it was the healthiest relationship I'd had in years. Okay, so, first, remember how she posted that whole thing about communication in marriage?
Yeah, people started asking questions. Specifically, your cousin Beth asked what exactly happened that required so much communication. And Jessica, being Jessica, told the whole story like it made her look good. "Oh no," I said, but I was smiling. "Oh yes," she literally posted, "I changed Alex's flight as a joke to give him some alone time in Mexico, and now he's being dramatic about it." Posted it publicly on Facebook where your entire family could see it. Chloe grabbed my arm, eyes wide. "She did not." "She absolutely did," Mark confirmed. And then your Aunt Karen, the good Karen, not the mean Karen, commented, "You abandoned your husband in a foreign country and you're surprised he's upset?" And it spiraled from there. I put my head in my hands, torn between secondhand embarrassment and pure joy. What did people say? Oh man, where do I start? Your mom commented just a single question mark, which is somehow the most devastating response possible. Laura wrote an entire essay about how this isn't quirky, it's emotional abuse. My girlfriend Sarah posted a link to an article about narcissistic behavior. Even my mom commented, and she never comments on anything. What did your mom say? This explains so much about their marriage, which, ouch, but also accurate. Chloe was fully invested now, leaning in like we were watching the season finale of a really good TV show. What about her friends? Did anyone defend her? "That's the best part," Mark said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. "Her friends tried at first. You know, the usual. Jessica is just spontaneous and Alex is probably overreacting stuff. But then people started sharing their own Jessica stories. Remember when she borrowed Jessica's car and returned it with an empty tank and a parking ticket? Oh God, I forgot about that. Jessica didn't forget. She commented with receipts, literal photos of the parking ticket. Then other people started piling on with their own stories. It was like watching a dam break, except the dam was made of repressed complaints about Jessica's behavior. I sat there processing this, trying to reconcile the image of Jessica I'd been carrying around, spontaneous, creative, free-spirited, with the reality that apparently everyone else had seen clearly while I was busy making excuses. "So she's basically been canceled by Facebook?" Chloe asked. "Not canceled exactly, more like exposed. The post has like 200 comments now, and maybe 5 of them are supportive. The rest are either people calling her out or people sharing their own Jessica horror stories." After I hung up with Mark, Chloe and I sat in silence for a moment, watching the waves crash against the shore. "You okay?" she asked. I know she's terrible, but that's still gotta be weird to process. Honestly, I feel like I've been living in an alternate reality for 3 years, and I'm just now stepping back into the real one. Everyone saw what she was except me. That's not true. You saw it. You just convinced yourself you were seeing it wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Have you seen Facebook? Call me. Then another from my mom. Alex, honey, we need to talk about Jessica. Then one from Jessica's own mother. Alex, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd done something like this. I don't know what's gotten into her. That last one hit different. Jessica's mom had always been her biggest defender, the person who explained away every weird behavior as artistic temperament or creative genius. If even she was apologizing, things had really gone sideways. I called Laura, who answered on the first ring. Please tell me you've seen the Facebook post, she said without preamble. Mark gave me the highlights. The highlights don't do it justice. Alex, people are dragging her through the mud, and honestly, she deserves it. Do you know how many people have messaged me privately saying they've been waiting for someone to call out her behavior? How many? 17. 17 people, Alex. 17 people who've apparently been bitten by Jessica's chaos and just never said anything because they thought you were happy. I thought about that. 17 people who'd seen what I couldn't or wouldn't see. 17 people who'd kept quiet to keep the peace, just like I had. What's she saying now? I asked. Oh, she's gone full victim mode. Posted another status about how hurtful it is when people don't understand your sense of humor. But here's the thing, nobody's buying it anymore. Even her college friends are being like, girl, maybe sit this one out. That evening, I got a text from Jessica's boss at the architecture firm where she worked. We'd met a few times at company parties, and he'd always seemed like a reasonable guy who probably wondered why his employee's husband always looked vaguely stressed. Alex, I hope you're doing okay. Jessica mentioned the Mexico situation. Just wanted to say that if she treats clients the way she apparently treats her personal relationships, we're going to have some serious conversations when she gets back to work. Wishing you the best. I showed the text to Chloe, who let out a low whistle. Her boss just essentially told you he's going to discipline her for her personal behavior. That's wow. Is it bad that I don't feel bad about it? Not even a little bit. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She played the stupidest game possible, and the prize is everyone finding out who she really is. My phone kept buzzing throughout the day. Mutual friends asking if I was okay. Family members offering support. Even my old college roommate reached out, saying he'd always thought Jessica was a lot, but hadn't wanted to say anything. The one that got me, though, was from my boss, Richard. Taking some extra time is absolutely fine. In fact, take another week if you need it. Your wife's prank made the rounds at the office. HR wants to talk to you about our family crisis leave policy when you get back. We've got your back. I stared at that message for a long time. My boss had heard about this. HR knew. Everyone knew. The story had spread beyond Facebook and into real life. And everywhere it went, people were unanimously agreeing that Jessica had massively screwed up. You know what the weirdest part is? I said to Chloe that night over dinner. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Like, see, I wasn't crazy for being upset. But mostly, I just feel tired. That's normal. You spent 3 years gaslighting yourself into thinking her behavior was acceptable. Finding out everyone else thought it was insane doesn't erase those 3 years of confusion. How are you so wise about this stuff? Therapy. So much therapy. Like an amount of therapy that would make Freud say, maybe that's too much therapy. She smiled. But seriously, you're processing years of normalized chaos in real time.
Cut yourself some slack. Later that night, Jessica posted one more Facebook status. Someone screenshot it and sent it to me within minutes. I'm taking a break from social media to focus on my mental health and healing. I hope everyone who piled on today feels good about themselves. The comments were immediate and merciless. Girl, you abandoned your husband in Mexico. Log off. Healing from what? From consequences? The audacity of making yourself the victim here is truly Olympic level. Even worse for her, someone had commented, maybe use this social media break to Google how to apologize without being manipulative. It had 63 likes. I put my phone down and looked out at the ocean. Somewhere back in Illinois, Jessica was dealing with the fallout of her actions for the first time in probably her entire life. No one was buying her version of events. No one was making excuses for her. No one was cleaning up her mess. For once, she was sitting in the consequences of her choices. And apparently, those consequences were uncomfortable enough that she needed to heal from them. "You think she'll actually learn from this?" Chloe asked, following my gaze to the water. Honestly, probably not. People like Jessica don't usually have come-to-Jesus moments. They just find new audiences who haven't figured them out yet. Cynical, but accurate. 3 years of marriage will do that to you. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Jessica's mom. "Alex, I owe you an apology. I've been enabling her behavior for years. I convinced myself she was just creative and free-spirited, but I see now that I was making excuses for someone who needs to grow up. You deserve better. I'm sorry." I read it twice, then showed it to Chloe. "Her own mother," Chloe said quietly. "That's gotta sting." "Yeah," I said. "But maybe that's what she needs. Not people protecting her from reality, but people finally letting reality catch up to her." "Think she'll try to call?" "Probably, but I'm not picking up." "Good," Chloe said, raising her beer bottle to consequences, finally finding their target. I clinked my bottle against hers. To consequences. And somewhere in the Mexican night, with the sound of waves and distant music and the peaceful absence of chaos, I realized something. The joke hadn't just reversed, it had finally told the truth. And the truth was Jessica had been the punchline all along. I stayed another month, not because I was running away or hiding or avoiding the inevitable return to reality, but because for the first time in years, maybe ever, I was making a decision based purely on what I wanted. Not what someone else needed, not what would keep the peace, not what would make me look like a good husband or a responsible adult. Just what I wanted. And what I wanted was to stay in Mexico a little longer. My boss had been surprisingly cool about it. After the "your wife abandoned you in another country" story made the rounds at the office, I'd suddenly become the recipient of an absurd amount of goodwill and understanding. Richard told me to take all the time I needed, that my projects could wait, and that honestly, the team was just impressed I was handling everything so well. I didn't tell him that handling it well mostly involved eating tacos and pretending my phone didn't exist. I'd also started working remotely, which turned out to be shockingly easy when you weren't spending half your mental energy managing someone else's emotional chaos. I'd get up early, knock out my work before lunch, and then spend the afternoon exploring with Chloe, or just sitting on the beach reading books I'd been meaning to read for years, but somehow never had time for. Turns out I'd had plenty of time. I'd just been spending it all on Jessica. Chloe and I had fallen into this easy rhythm that didn't need labels or definitions or urgent conversations about what this is. We'd grab breakfast together most mornings, work on our respective laptops in companionable silence, then go do something, explore a new part of the city, try a restaurant one of her blog followers recommended, or just sit on the beach and exist without crisis. "You know what's weird?" I said one afternoon, watching her edit photos for her blog. We were at our usual cafe, the one that had basically become our office. I'm happier right now in the middle of my marriage falling apart than I was in the entire 3 years of actually being married. Chloe looked up from her laptop, pushing her glasses up her nose. "That's not weird at all. You're finally not carrying someone else's emotional baggage. You're traveling light." Is that a travel blog metaphor? Everything's a travel blog metaphor if you're brave enough, she grinned. But seriously, you've been walking around for 3 years with a 50-pound backpack full of Jessica's issues. Of course you feel lighter now that you've put it down. I didn't realize how heavy it was until I wasn't carrying it anymore. That's the thing about slowly increasing weight. You don't notice until someone asks you why you're walking funny. My phone buzzed. It had been doing that less and less over the past few weeks. Jessica's attempts to reach me had gone from constant to frequent to occasional to sporadic. The Facebook fallout had apparently taught her that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the victim in this story, though I doubted the lesson had really sunk in. This time it was Mark. Jessica hired a divorce lawyer, thought you should know. I stared at the message for a moment, waiting for the panic or sadness or any of the emotions I thought I'd feel when this moment came. Instead, I felt relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. "She filed," I said to Chloe, showing her the text. "How do you feel?" Like I just got parole from a prison sentence I didn't realize I was serving. Chloe reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Good, that's the correct response." I called Mark back, putting him on speaker so Chloe could hear. "How'd you find out?" I asked. She posted about it, not directly, but one of those vague, sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones posts, with a photo of her looking sad in golden hour lighting. Someone commented asking if she was okay, and she said she'd made the difficult choice to file for divorce. Chloe made a noise that was half laugh, half disbelief. "She made the difficult choice? She made it?" "That's Jessica," I said, rewriting history until she's always the protagonist making brave choices instead of the chaos goblin facing consequences. "Chaos goblin?" Mark repeated. "I'm using that. That's perfect." We talked logistics for a bit. I need to get a lawyer, deal with paperwork, figure out what to do about our apartment and our stuff, and all the boring administrative tasks that come with untangling a life. But none of it felt urgent or scary. It just felt like items on a to-do list, and I was good at to-do lists. After we hung up, Chloe closed her laptop and gave me a look I'd come to recognize as her real talk incoming face. "So," she said, "what are you going to do long term?" I mean, honestly, I have no idea. Get divorced, obviously. Probably find a new apartment, since ours has wine stains and bad memories. Keep working. Keep existing. Maybe get a therapist to unpack why I spent 3 years in a relationship that made me miserable. "Those are all good plans," Chloe said carefully. "But what do you want? Not what you should do, or what's responsible, or what makes sense. What do you actually want?" I thought about it, watching the street outside the cafe, tourists taking photos, locals going about their day, the whole world just spinning along without needing my input or permission. "I want to keep feeling like this," I said finally. "Not the divorce part or the drama part, but this part. The part where I wake up and my first thought isn't, what crisis do I need to manage today? I want to keep working remotely sometimes. I want to travel more. I want to have breakfast with people who make me laugh instead of people who make me anxious." "Those are achievable wants," Chloe said, smiling. "Are they, though? Or is this just some temporary Mexico magic that'll disappear the second I get back to real life?" Real life is what you make it. You've been living in Jessica's version of real life for 3 years. Time to build your own version. Over the next few weeks, I did exactly that. I found a divorce lawyer who came highly recommended and who, upon hearing my story, said, "Yeah, this should be pretty straightforward. She doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, legally or morally." I started apartment hunting online, looking at places that were just mine. 1 bedroom, because I didn't need space for someone else's pottery wheel or impulse purchases. Near a park, because I discovered I actually liked running when I wasn't too stressed to remember I had legs. I called my family and actually talked to them instead of just giving them surface-level updates designed to avoid questions about my marriage. Turned out they were pretty great when I wasn't using all my energy pretending everything was fine. And I spent time with Chloe. Not dating exactly, because neither of us was ready to label what we were doing. But we were doing something, and that something felt healthy and easy, and nothing like the complicated mess I just escaped. One evening, about 3 weeks before I was planning to fly home, we were sitting on the beach watching the sunset. It had become our thing. This daily ritual of watching the sky do its dramatic performance in shades of orange and pink and purple. "You know what I realized?" Chloe said, drawing patterns in the sand with her finger. "This is the longest I've hung out with someone without wanting to run away. Is that a compliment, or are you setting up an elaborate joke?" "It's a compliment, you weirdo.
I like hanging out with you. You're the only person I've met in years who doesn't make me feel like I need to be on all the time." "Right back at you," I said.
You're like the human embodiment of not needing to try too hard. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and I thought about how different this felt from sitting with Jessica. With her, silence meant she was plotting something, or upset about something, or about to announce she'd made a major life decision without consulting me. With Chloe, silence was just silence, peaceful, easy, not requiring translation or management. "So," she said eventually, "you're going back in 3 weeks." "Yeah. And then what?" "And then I start my actual life, the one where I'm not a supporting character in someone else's chaos show." "Think you'll miss Mexico?" "Absolutely, but I think I'll miss this version of me more if I don't take him home with me." Chloe smiled. Good answer. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Jessica, the first one in days. "I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted." I read it, then showed it to Chloe, who rolled her eyes so hard I worried they might get stuck. "You got what you wanted," she quoted, "like you wanted any of this, like you secretly hoped your wife would abandon you in Mexico so you could have an extended vacation." Should I respond? What would you say? I thought about it, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. There were a lot of things I could say. I could point out that she was the one who filed for divorce. I could remind her that she started this whole mess. I could list every single thing she'd done wrong over 3 years and document exactly how we got here. But instead, I just deleted the message and put my phone away. "Nothing," I said to Chloe. "There's nothing to say that would make a difference." "Look at you being emotionally mature and stuff. I'm so proud." "I learned from the best," I said, bumping her shoulder with mine. We watched the rest of the sunset in silence, and I realized something. Jessica thought she'd left me behind when she took that flight at 6 a.m. 3 weeks ago. She thought she was teaching me some kind of lesson or pulling off the prank of the century, or whatever backwards logic had convinced her that abandoning your spouse was comedy gold. But really, she just freed me. Freed me from thinking I needed to fix everything, from believing that love meant accepting chaos, from the exhausting work of making excuses for inexcusable behavior. She'd freed me to find out who I was when I wasn't busy being her safety net. And that person, he was sitting on a beach in Mexico, watching the sunset with someone who made him laugh without making him anxious, making plans for a life that didn't require crisis management or damage control. That person was doing pretty damn good. "You know what's funny?" I said to Chloe as the last bit of sun disappeared below the horizon. "What?" She thought abandoning me would be hilarious, and honestly, it kinda was, just not in the way she expected. Chloe laughed, that real laugh I'd come to love over the past month. That's the spirit. Turn your trauma into comedy. Very healthy. I learned that from you too. I'm a terrible influence, the best kind. We walked back to the hotel as the stars started coming out. And I thought about how 3 weeks ago, I'd been a man holding a half-eaten mango barefoot in a robe, wondering if his marriage counted as kidnapping or just stupidity with sunscreen. Now, I was just a man who'd survived, learned, grown, and come out the other side with better boundaries and an appreciation for really good tacos. Jessica had tried to make me the punchline of her joke, but the joke was on her, because I'd never been happier in my entire life. And that, my friends, was absolutely hilarious.